Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. I just want to rewind the clock just to yesterday, Sunday, and I want to show you the flow pattern of the atmosphere, because we featured a highly amplified pattern that was actually what we call the omega pattern out here just off of the west coast of the United States. We also saw this trough that was sitting here off the northeastern part of the United States, and I want to make sure that we know where this omega pattern, see the ridge here? The trough there, and this trough in the northeast, where these particular features are going in the near term. Because this highly amplified pattern, which was setting records in parts of Alaska, was also keeping the northwestern United States cool, very weak flow across the United States, allowing for some very warm temperatures in the eastern Corn Belt, and we need to know where this particular feature is going in the near term because it could change everything about what we've got going across the United States. So just to show you what the result of some of those high temperatures were in Alaska, well, you can see actually here, look at the smoke. We were getting temperatures at 90 degrees in parts of the southern half of the state of Alaska here, and they have been very hot and dry, and as a consequence, you can see some of the wildfire smoke there. In addition to that, let me take you over toward the Great Lakes states and parts of Ontario and Quebec, and you can see here, look at all the smoke that was in this particular region in the day on Sunday as well from some of the fires in parts of Canada. Where it is noticeably not burning, that's the western United States. You can actually see here, just looking back on July the 7th, in fact, it's very hard to see any sort of large wildfire activity. And one of the big reasons for that is look at over the last 7 days what that highly amplified omega pattern has done to temperatures. We can see that a large section of the western half of North America really spent the last 7 days on a cooler bias. Yeah, we were hot in Alaska, and we were very warm here in the eastern Corn Belt compared to average, which has been great. We needed that heat in that part of the country. Overall, that flow pattern has got us set up like this. Well, our questions to be answered in this video are, where is this pattern going, and is anything sneaking underneath it? And we're going to talk about that in a few seconds. Well, to answer that first question, remember in the last video, last Thursday, I talked about how we'd been in this negative phase of the North Atlantic Oscillation for quite some time. That featured a larger ridge that was sitting over parts of Greenland with a trough just to its south here off the northeast. That's been a very persistent picture going all the way back to May. Well, we can see in the forecast that this particular feature in the flow of the jet stream is moderating, going back over toward neutral. And that's significant in what our temperatures are going to be doing in the coming days. So let's talk about them first. Over the next 5 days, you can still see the slight cool bias we're forecasting through parts of the Corn Belt here. Now remember, we have been watching this now for about 2 weeks. So this was the old 8 to 14 day forecast calling for this cooler time period. The new one is much different. You're going to see that in a few seconds. But where we have cooler weather sneaking down from this region, from central Canada, north central Canada, and right into this area. Much more moderate near average temperatures across the west. Look at the 6 to 10 day time period. We're going to talk in a minute why this area is going to be carrying the cool bias and why we have warmth returning to a large section of the country. The flow pattern is allowing for that. And stretching this out to the 11 to 15 day time period, the GFS ensemble is on the right and the European is on the left. Now through days 0 through 10, very good agreement, but there's some differences once we get out beyond day 10. First of all, look, the European is a much warmer model right now than the US. We can see that the temperature anomalies are a bit greater in the European model than they are in the GFS. And we need to talk about why these differences exist and what will be controlling the flow pattern of the atmosphere. Some of that story is told right here, looking at the next 8 days of total accumulated precipitation. Now, I'm sure your eye is drawn to the feature coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Yes, we will be talking about what is happening there and where that is going. But meanwhile, look at the north central plains, very active, especially over the coming days here, in terms of a lot of precipitation due to a low pressure system forming early this week. And there will be through this area, right in through here, shower and thunderstorm activity that isn't going to be resolved very well by this particular model run. Also, the Northwest, we will be seeing precipitation, especially coming into parts of Washington and Oregon. And normally this is a very dry time period, so this is a substantial difference from normal. Southeast, you're also going to continue to stay wet with daily convective activity. So with this, We need to get into this forecast and understand this precipitation pattern, and we're going to start first with what's going on in the tropics. We've been talking about in our video last Thursday how the long-range European model kept picking up on the development of something here in the Gulf of Mexico. And I said, it's so far out, I don't want to try to tell you what I think is going to happen because the chances of me being wrong were relatively high given the time that I was trying to forecast this system. But we right now are watching for some thunderstorm activity that moved over the last day or so over parts of the southeast. There will be a boundary sitting right in through here that will help push these tropical thunderstorms into the Gulf of Mexico, where ocean temperatures are very warm and wind shear is relatively light. Now, I've made a case that much of the main development region of the tropical Atlantic here has been shut down. It still is. This is a homegrown system, and I was quite impressed that the European model picked up on this. Now, the big question is, where is that system going and how strong is it going to be? Well, this is where the system is coming from. Looking in the day on Sunday, getting into early Monday morning, you can actually see there's an upper level low sitting in this area. That's why you got that counterclockwise spin there. And those thunderstorms that are in that area are sitting on a boundary in through here that will be moving into the Gulf of Mexico. And once it gets down into this area, you're going to see plenty of warm water. You're going to see plenty of low wind shear, and we need to see where it moves from there. That's the big question, okay? Right now, the European ensemble has enormous spread on where this can go. Initiating right in through here, the spread looks something like this. So we don't yet know where this particular system is going to go. We don't yet know what its strength will be by the time we get to the end of this week. What we do know is that it's going to have an abundant amount of moisture to work with. So the flooding threat in through this corridor right in through here will be high as this system continues to make progress into the Gulf of Mexico. So we must watch this all week long to see when and where it will be picking up the energy it needs to be producing that heavy rainfall. One thing is for certain, ocean temperatures are very warm. We know that anything above 26 degrees Celsius, that's about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, has got plenty of energy to support the development of a hurricane, and that whole area I just circled there is plenty warm. Upper levels of the atmosphere are very supportive of this, and we've been carrying this narrative now for several weeks. Upper level support, look at the cooler colors. Today, sitting over the the Eastern Pacific, where we still have two tropical cyclones to be talking about there, but look, by the end of this upcoming week, that shifts over to the Caribbean Gulf of Mexico and hangs out there as we get into week 2. So we're still watching that area for any potential development. What's going on right now, though, is that we have this large area of higher atmospheric pressure sitting here. And what it's going to be doing is slowly sliding over the next few days toward the northeast. We will see a lot of thunderstorm activity here in the high plains up on the Rocky Mountains as a new low pressure system emerges and then heads towards northern Minnesota into southern Canada. At the meanwhile, while this is happening, around the edge of this high pressure system, we're going to continue to see a lot of convection here, and that's what's going to sneak into the Gulf of Mexico and redevelop into a system that's going to come into more than likely the border between Texas and Louisiana. So that is our setup, and here's what it looks like in terms of severe weather. In the day on Monday, that's what we're watching over here in the upper left. It's going to be the high plains, and it's going to be this region here in the northern plains that has the best chance for strong to severe storms. Meanwhile, higher atmospheric pressure occupies much of the Great Lakes states. As we get into the day on Tuesday, we're watching for a low pressure system to emerge here and then move on off toward Minnesota and getting into the Canadian provinces as our high pressure system shoves over this direction. All around this, scattered showers and thunderstorms. In the day on Wednesday, our low pressure system will be much more well developed here and carry a front that stretches from parts of Wisconsin into Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and back over through Missouri, even into Oklahoma and Texas. So that's where we're looking for the next 3 days at where we could see some stronger to severe thunderstorms. Showing you this in animation, this is our high-resolution NAM model. There's that low. See it up there in the Northcentral plains moving through Minnesota that develops on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. So you can see high pressure dominating over here in the near term with this low spinning here heading on up into parts of Ontario and over toward Quebec. Now let me take off those drawings and just show it to you one more time. Right there the low forms. and presses east. You saw at the beginning of this on Monday in this area. Watch it one more time. Thunderstorms erupt on the heat of the day, and they move into the Central Plains. We can also see the upper level low spinning here, sending its main piece of that upper level low into the Gulf of Mexico, and that's the system we're going to be watching later this week develop in this area. And finally, watch the Pacific Northwest here. There is more rainfall coming in right there as the trough that was sitting off of the west coast hits Oregon and Washington. Now let's stretch this out a little farther. To start things off, here's our big area of higher atmospheric pressure. Watch the low to develop here, and watch the tropical thunderstorms that are sitting here over the southeast move into the Gulf of Mexico and then eventually come over into Texas and Louisiana. So there we go. Moving forward, this is now Monday evening. Getting into Tuesday morning, we're seeing the low develop here in the North Central Plains, so North Dakota, Minnesota. That front will drag right in through this area on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. Now by this time, we have three things going on. One, our low pressure system is sitting here. The rain that was in the Dakotas has moved toward Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Great Lakes states with a front dragged right in through this area Wednesday night. So that's where we're going to watch for strong to severe storms. The tropical convection that was sitting over parts of the southeast has now moved into the Gulf of Mexico, and this will be the beginning, again, this will be Wednesday night, of the tropical system we're going to watch. Third thing, this is where the trough comes into the Pacific Northwest, bringing precipitation into that area. So pressing forward, this is now Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. Our first low pressure system will bring its front here through parts of the northeast, so scattered showers and thunderstorms all along this corridor. The very tail end of this boundary will interact with this low pressure system sitting just south of Louisiana, and watch what the current operational run does to it. It wants to take it right here by the time we get into Friday night, into Saturday morning, into the border between Texas and Louisiana. Meanwhile, scattered showers and thunderstorms on plenty of Gulf moisture moving through parts of the Corn Belt. Now from this point forward, we're here Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, Sunday morning. You're just going to see throughout the weekend and early next week that the operational European model wants to take this right here through Oklahoma, through Arkansas, into Missouri, and spin it right here over parts of Iowa and Illinois. Now, we don't know if it's going to do this exactly. It's pretty far out in the forecast, but it is a plausible scenario given the upper level flow pattern of the atmosphere. And that's what you're going to see right here. Remember, we're watching this big high pressure system here, which has three lows that have surrounded it. And we're going to see what goes on with this upper level low, part of the North Atlantic Oscillation, in the coming days. And I want to show you these details. You ready? Pressing play. Here's the shortwave that sneaks through the North Central Plains, creating that low pressure system that goes through middle of the week that eventually drapes a front through parts of, again, Michigan into Illinois. Now, while that's going through, we see a deeper trough that is sitting here right off the west coast, funneling that moisture into the northwest. And here is the trough that's associated with that tropical system that's moving into this area. Now, as we press forward, we see that by the time I get into the weekend, the European ensemble wants to keep what could be called Barry right here coming into the Texas-Louisiana border. Meanwhile, look at the ridge that surrounds it. And as I take you forward in this forecast, this is the major difference. We now see that by the time we get to the middle of the month, where we had been in the past forecasting, cooler than average weather for the second half of the month, we see the heights raising in this area. And that just means more moderation of the temperatures. As I move forward, look at this. We're on the 16th, 17th, 18th. We lose that big dominant feature over here, which was part of the negative phase of the North Atlantic Oscillation. And the raising of the heights in this area are changing that. Again, this just means a moderation of temperatures in this area. We were looking at a 1 to 3 degree cool bias. We're now looking at things being much, much closer to normal. As we move forward in the forecast, we see that stretching this even out to middle of July 22nd, 23rd here, we see a large ridge in this area. And that ridge that's sitting there is going to help keep things warm all around its periphery. If there's one spot that may see some cooler weather, it's going to be parts of the Pacific Northwest. But that's what this flow pattern is advertising. And to finish up our U.S. part of the forecast here, we can just look at the European ensemble next 15 days on the left and the GFS ensemble on the right. They're in agreement about the North Central Plains being wet. A lot of that's coming here in the next few days. You do see drier time period here over the eastern half of the Corn Belt. But remember, we are going to bring a front through here midweek, bringing in some thunderstorms, and so therefore there will be some precip there. We can see that both models want to do something like this with this tropical system, the European model being much wetter than the GFS. And we don't know, but it looks as though it could be bringing this up into parts of Missouri, Iowa, and Illinois with time. They also both agree with that trough sitting off the northwest at the wetter than average conditions that may hit coastal Oregon and Washington and parts of British Columbia. So some interesting similarities, yet some differences between our two major modeling groups. Okay, so one last thing that I want to cover here is I want to tell you what I'll be looking at this week preparing for Wednesday. We did have released at the end of last week our new long-range updates from the European model. So we're looking here at August. It has had a pretty substantial change from previous model runs, warming up much of the United States for the month of August. And in terms of precipitation, we did see this drier pocket emerge. And I got to be looking into this to understand what these changes are and how significant they are and what my forecast confidence is. But I'll give you that update on Wednesday when I release my next long-range update. Okay, let's now turn our attention to some other places around the world. Just want to let you know something. Last week, we did have a pretty decent cold snap that moved through parts of southern Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, and northern Argentina. Yes, there was some frost here, but remember, we've got most of our safrinha crop out. This could have impacted winter wheat that's planted here. I don't know much about winter wheat production in parts of South America, but it's something to look out for. Next 7 days, temperatures are much more moderate. That's what you see over here on the right. Taking you to Europe, we have a pretty highly amplified pattern moving forward with a sizable ridge here that builds into a deeper trough that's sitting here over parts of western Russia. That's going to keep a big section of Europe on the drier side, as you see here, but due to a cutoff low that's sitting in this area, may be wetter in the Iberian Peninsula, wetter here in parts of the Mediterranean, and as you can see, much wetter here. Let me draw this in for you. This is the Black Sea, so parts of Ukraine labeled right in through here, and the Russian wheat belt having a wetter than average pattern moving forward. Also, cooler than average in this area as well. So I want to show you that about what's going on in Europe. Also, feel free to pause the video right here and take a closer look at these maps. I wanted to toss them in. This is what June looked like 2019. So June here for Europe in terms of precipitation, humidity, soil moisture, and air temperature anomalies. Very important to see that when we think about the longer term picture for much of Europe. And to finish this up, I want to take you quickly over to what's going on in India and China. We have the Mayu front. That is a tropical feature. That is a monsoonal feature sitting here over parts of southeastern China. Extremely wet, picking up another 3 to 10 inches of rainfall along that. That's a major flooding threat. We had a big pulse of moisture that came out of the forward advancement of the Indian monsoon. We're expecting over the next 8 days here, some locations in the foothills of the Himalayan mountains to pick up between 10 and 30 inches of rain. Meanwhile, southern India is much drier than normal for this time of year. We still have yet to get the monsoon to get into this area. But coming up to China here, remember this area and this area are the major productive regions that surround Beijing, and we can see that both of them over the next week are not forecast to have much in the way of precipitation. Very light amounts overall, and it shows up much better in the European ensemble. So we're just going to have to keep a close eye on that as we progress forward. But south of that area, a lot of flooding going on. Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. We at Nutrien Ag Solutions want to thank you for your attention. Hope you look forward to all of our forecasts coming out this week at my.nutrienagsolutions.com. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.